for my high school team, and on the boys' side, and with the girls here as well. And I guess I um, just to, and I go, this has been talked about on this call prior, but just what a business it is, and um, I just, you're trying to recruit with some integrity, in the way that, the things that you're trying to give to your program. And I think it's just alarming. Well, not alarming. I guess I'm not really that surprised with you, but just the how much hockey there is, um, you know, to be played during. I mean, we're coming in July and August, and there's just tournament out this way, and people just willing to try to get their kids noticed and that. So just more of a statement more than anything. In regards to the Kraken draft, yeah, it was interesting to see, especially just Giordano kind of taken back, um, I don't think he really expected to be exposed, and so interesting to see how that all plays out.
What did you think of that?
I mean, I understand it. I mean, I think there's been rumblings that are thought that his foot speed as just as they get as guys get older, they get slower, and I think there's been rumblings of that. So I think that they, maybe thought that, well, they did think that he wasn't as effective, so gave them, the thought that they would be able to move on from him. Um, I mean, there needs to be some changes within Calgary, obviously, and obviously that's a pretty big one if you lose your captain.
But I'm going to be honest with you, Dominic. I don't work for them, and you may not, but you're still attached. Um, in terms of that, the leadership mentioned in the thesis, talking about a culture, the decision didn't surprise me. It is an X and O decision. It's a dollars and cents decision. But I think it's an example why they haven't succeeded, because he provided a culture that they need of leadership. And in my mind, looking at the drafts, which were surprising for Kraken, I think they drafted that type of player with leadership qualities. So my opinion is they've they're just spinning their wheels again, and it would have been, yeah, a financial risk on their part, but you can't weigh the leadership factor and his influence. But there's a lot more going on internally with the culture. So I think it's a good thing for him to make that change, because he's really been the most consistent factor in the organization for a long period of time. So anybody, any other thoughts on that?
Well, I look at it as a business decision, much like Colorado not yet coming to an agreement with Landeskog, and the Islanders exposed Josh Bailey, who's maybe not quite on Gio's level in terms of leadership commitment, but he's been a lifetime New York Islander and good, useful player still. It's business. I mean, I think they all look at the organization and say, hey, we're not likely to really win next year, or maybe even the year after. They got some work to do, and so they're trying to give themselves the best chance to have a solid defensive base for the next 3 or 4 years versus maybe the next 1 or 2. I mean, we all know number 99 got traded, so why should Gio or Josh Bailey or Landeskog be any different? It's just a business thing. And really, whether it's numbers, something needs to change in the culture there. And maybe what better way to make a change than lop off the top, if that's what Gio is, and he appears to be that from the outside, and then try to start and build something new. I don't know. There's all kinds of ways you can look at it, but I think in the bottom line is they needed to protect their base defensively. They're, in my mind, they got some work to do there anyway, and you know, he was kind of the most expendable one. Sad as it is in lots of ways.
Dom?
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim, and I think that maybe what this also does is allows other people in the room to maybe become the leaders where they weren't going to be able to as long as Verdano was there.
Yeah.
I think they're going to miss him. I don't think there's any question. I think he's one of those kind of guys that everybody wants to have on their team. But I think, as you said, I think it was a financial decision and a chance for them to move forward and try to develop a new culture within the room. I'm not sure that I see that much there from what we see from the outside. Not being in the room, you never know who the leaders really are.
Yeah.
But they do seem to be more of a quiet bunch, other than maybe Kachuk. Tanev is probably a good leader by example, but he doesn't appear to be a guy that's very vocal. So I think they're going to have to develop that, and I think that's probably the only way that was going to get accomplished if Verdano was really removed from there. Hate to see him go, but like Dom said, I think his foot speed was starting to go a little bit too, so maybe it was time.
Dom, I'm putting you on the spot. What would you have done if you were Brad Treliving?
Yeah, I don't disagree with the move, to be honest with you. I think Gio is a guy that obviously is an underdog, and that who was able to accomplish so much just based on sheer will and determination, and really led by example. With all that being said, he wasn't a vocal leader, and I know that. And again, from my experience with leadership, the best leaders aren't the ones that have a lot to say. But I think it's time for a different voice in the room. To be honest with you, I think, and whether Monahan and Goudreau stick around, and some of those younger guys, I think, and I don't know what if they're going to bring anybody in or what their plan is, but the recipe for success or for what they've been doing clearly hasn't worked, and I think they need to make a change there. So Gio gave his heart and soul every time he played, so I think it's in this way they're able to hide around the fact that financial and everything else. But I do think that there needs to be a change in the way they do things, because I think the path that they're along doesn't it hasn't resulted in what they're hoping. So they've got obviously some good pieces there. They've got the goaltender, which is such a critical piece. They've got some good young defensemen coming up. It's up front where I question it a little bit. Like, do they truly have a number one center? Are they going to be by committee? All that being said, there needs to be a little bit of a shake and a little bit of a reset, and I think this probably accomplishes that.
Good point. The one name that hasn't been mentioned, and I'm always curious about this, when decisions like that are made, I'm sure discussions are had with everybody, and in my mind, as long as Daryl Sutter is involved in that process, I have more trust in it because of experience and his, where he's going to come from. So, okay, I'll get back to you guys. You continue the conversation. I've got a call from the medical lab here, so go ahead.
Tim, are you back from overseas?
Yeah, I got back Monday. We had a really good week. It was, we're on twice a day most of the days. It was really hot, the whole week, like in the 30s every day, and so they were a couple of pretty. The girls were pretty tired after the first day and a half, and they really toughed it out on the third day. We were on in the morning. We went to the beach in between skates for about an hour and a half, played a bunch of games. It was a lot of fun, but it was a tiring week for the girls. But I think generally speaking, a really good week. So we feel like we're ready to go.
Yeah. When does the event start?
It's our first game's on the 20th. That's when it starts. The teams all fly in on the 10th.
Yeah.
The group's going to practice for 2 days, I think, before they fly over here. I'm not going to go over for that. We have to quarantine. As of now, we have to quarantine for like 4 or 5 days. Get out on the 15th, have a couple of days of practice, play one exhibition game, and then start on the 20th. So,
is everybody vaccinated over there, or how's that?
They're moving along like everybody else. Like, not sure where we're at as a group. I'm pretty sure most of the girls have had at least one now. We had our one young 17, 18-year-old. She missed the last day at camp last week because she had a vaccination appointment she couldn't miss. So I think everybody's had at least one, but I'm not sure many young people would have had two yet. So
yeah.
And how is your Beantown experience?
Yeah, well, it was good. There's like two phases. So we had the first week was the 16s, a little bit older girls, and we're just starting the second one, the younger ones. I was able to connect with Jim there, Jim Plummer.
Good.
He actually just sent me a text just as we were speaking here. I'll fire him back here, but he, it's there's a lot of girls playing. It's unbelievable. But it was good. I mean, we ended up our last two games. So the first game we had 3 girls that weren't playing, and so we had a couple lines. And we kind of ran out of gas against the CYA team. The format's a little bit different. They had 2 22-minute periods. And so we were tied after one, and we ended up losing by 3 goals at the end. And then we played the next game was against and they're all top teams, but we ended up tying and beating in our last 2 games some of the top teams. So it was definitely eye-opening for a lot of the girls that we were able to get together, all from kind of Northern California there, to be able to just kind of see the talent that we have. And, we played, and we've talked about it on this call before. We play an attack system, like we're pressuring a lot of the time. And, we're definitely building confidence. So we'll see with the younger group. The younger group is equally as much potential, but as I say, these teams are pretty polished here. It seems like the some of the teams were you can tell they've been playing together a while.
As you get, did you touch base with many coaches at all? I
did. Yeah, I did. I talked to, and again, it was, I talked to the guy from Bemidji, and then Bowden there as well, and I talked to Jim. And yeah, there's a lot around. So it's a little bit overwhelming, because you don't want to, you're dealing with your team, and then you don't want to be that guy flying around. But I'm definitely going to be a little better understanding after being out here, as far as to reach out, be able to give a little bit of my background, and then just to let them know where we're playing. That's the thing. Like, there's 8 rinks of girls playing at the same time. If you're not there looking at somebody, it's not like you're just going to stumble upon it and just, so yeah, there definitely needs to be some pre-work as far as kind of orchestrating where you want to direct people, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite a process, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a racket. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Do you know? Did you ever cross paths with Gino Cavallini at all?
No, where's he at?
So he owns and runs Chicago Mission
Oh,
now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he and I think a partner, they bought them out. They were in financial trouble. I'm not sure how long ago, 5 or 8 years ago, and
Yeah.
so he's running that organization. He was in for the Max last year,
Yeah.
like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I had a beer with him, so
Yeah.
I didn't know if you knew him because he would certainly be helpful in terms of, you know, how to manage the whole process. It's just
Yeah.
such a process.
Yeah. So Rocky Thompson's daughter, oldest daughter, she's going to Harvard, and the younger one plays with us. And she had played at Mission for 1 year, and so they still had some contacts there. And like they're traveling in the month of, like they sent me the schedule, September and October. I think they're traveling 6 times. I think they're like flying 6 times to 6 different events in 2 months, and it's like
Wow.
that's the amount of events that we'll go to over the course of the whole year, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just at some point I'm like it's crazy, it's insane, but I can appreciate, you want to be quote unquote seen, and you want to go, like we weren't planning on going anywhere for Labor Day. Now we're going to Pittsburgh Labor Day because apparently there's a big tournament in Pittsburgh. So but yeah, it would be a good guy to talk to. If you have his contact information, I would I'd love to reach out to get some perspective.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do still have his cell and everything, so I'll maybe pop him a text and see if he can put you guys together. I might just be able to give you some ideas on how he
Sure.
deals with all the coaching, recruiting side
Yeah.
of things in particular.
Yeah, it's I really appreciate the contact with Jim. Jim's been very, very helpful in that regard, and he was able to come watch our girls, and well, according from his text, that he was impressed in what he saw. So
Okay.
I'll circle back with him here, because I don't think he knows that I'm here for this week, and so I'm not sure how many kids they're going to watch at this younger age. Like I don't know. You'd be able to, like, as far as, like, I would say it'd be limited, wouldn't it?
Well, no, there'll be lots of them. Like there's really a feeling out there now that, like, if you want to try to get some of the better players, you gotta really reach down, because once they sort of become players, I mean, Wisconsin and those guys they're on top of them and get them locked up. So a lot of them, I think, feel if they can start a relationship fairly early, they at least have a crack, maybe. So, yeah. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time at Vermont with, really anything below the top levels of women's hockey, but I know a lot of the teams would watch a lot of the Bantam stuff and try to figure out who the next wave is.
Yeah. So no, I it wouldn't hurt, I guess, to reach out to them again, and just to be able to say that we're still around. Like, there's some decent girls out west. Like, I'll be honest with you, like being able to see the top girls. Like, our girls played the last game. We played against a team from I think it was the Philadelphia area, Bay State, but they were one of the top ranked teams, and like, we should have beat them. We tied them 1-1, and we should have beat them, and we were able to play with them. And a lot of those girls were like on that national camp and everything else. So it was encouraging. It was encouraging for the girls, because, as we all know, it's about confidence, and to be able to understand that we're, the things that we're doing are enabling them to be competitive. Because I think the misconception a lot of times is that, like, they need to go out east to play. And so these girls all played, like, none of them played out east. They've all grown up and played in California. I mean, outside, like, my daughter has been there for 5 years, but realistically, the majority she's played been in California. So, I think, just a reassurance that there is good development out where we're at, that they don't have to, because a lot of them, once they get that midget age group, first year midget, they feel like they have to go to a prep school, right? And so,
Yeah. And how did it work out with, or did it with Cromer?
and then, yeah, you know what? We don't have the money to pay her, right?
Yeah.
Like she's going to go to Long Island, I think, because she's going to be an assistant in Long Island.
Oh, yeah. Like we had one of our girls on the Danish team played there the last 2 years. She's not going to go back for a couple of different reasons, but
Yeah.
Rob's a pretty good guy there. But
yeah, so and I guess it's not closed per se, but I would, if I read between the lines, I say it would be. I mean, I get it from her standpoint. She wants some, stability, security. I can't necessarily offer that. Like, I know we're gonna be able to build a program, but we're at at high school, and so like it came down to you'd have to do a couple different things. Like it would end up she'd be making like 40 grand, and her number was like 60, and
Yeah.
so I just said, hey, year two probably, and part of it too was the more girls that she would be able to recruit and bring in, she'd get a percentage of those. But again, if you're she had an opportunity to go to a D1 school and be an assistant coach, I get it. I can't hold that against her for that. But yeah, so the search continues. I mean, it's as you say, it's going to be it's difficult because it's not like I can pay somebody $60,000 to come and be an assistant coach. You're going to be kind of a jack of all trades. You're going to be coaching a couple teams, and you've got a lot of the administration stuff that you're doing to build the program as well. So there's two different entities, but I guess it just depends what you're looking for, right? Like, I think it's a great opportunity to be able to build something, and it's as I say, I talked to, and I don't know if we talked about it in this call, like I talked to the Swiss national team coach, because he used to coach me in Zurich, and in Switzerland there's no girls programs. There's none. They play with the boys. Like, I don't know if in Denmark, like, where do they play when they're younger, if they play with the boys growing up. But in Switzerland, there just aren't any. And so, they come over and they go to the prep school in North America, or they go play in Sweden. A lot of them will go play in Sweden. Or they just play with the boys. Now it's a little bit different because it's a bigger ice, and contact isn't as much of an issue. But see you, Lexi.
Gotta go, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
See you, Bob.
So there's some potential to bring in some of those girls. I guess my point being is that there's potential to bring in some of those girls, to be able to play. So there's a lot of different pathways. The non-traditional markets here, obviously, as well, and then in California, and then there as well. So again, it's it's going to take some time to build it, and so, but yeah, it's just not as clean cut as I think she wanted it to be. You're muted, Wally.
Yeah.
Sort of related to that, Daryl Belfry is in Calgary with his daughter, and I think there's 3 other girls from the club team she plays on in Toronto. Daryl's daughter is invited to the national team development camp next week. So Daryl's in town early with his daughter, and I believe a couple of the other players, just doing 3 ice times with them. I'm going to go to observe it today and meet up with Daryl. I just wanted to catch up with him. But the preparation, he's been working in Florida, and he invited Dr. Syl Corbett. And Syl is you know her, I think, Dom. she's a trainer, a neurological physiologist, has a chiropractic degree, and she's been out there training basically the group of people that Daryl might have in Florida. So here you have a national camp. The girls been invited to it, and that degree of preparation that's going into it. I'm really looking forward to see what Daryl does and to meet up with him and Ella and see where they're going. But from the point of
Wally, and when?
I'll send you the schedule. Email it. 5:45 tonight at Crowchild Twin. 3:15 Friday, Saturday at Father Bauer.
3:15.
3:15, I believe.
Father Bauer.
Yeah. And,
okay, I might try to come out either tonight or tomorrow or Saturday or sometime.
Yeah. Now, for Tim, I'm going to drop a book off at your place. And everybody, I'm thinking of getting Syl to come on a session and talk about her book. She's she's just a brilliant lady. She's a cartoonist, an opportunistic, a brilliant writer. And she's written, I read the book in half a day. Each chapter is a page and a half or 2 pages. And there's a cartoon which is drawn by her that is like really insightful and funny and humorous. And it's called defunk. Getting out of a funk, maintaining your positive health and a positive mental state. And she brings into it the last 20 pages of maybe the 60-page book is all the research authors that she's extracted her information from. So when my wife was reading it the other day, she just said, wow, we've got to get this for stocking stuffers for our daughters. And you got to have it. She said, it's better than the Bible. And I said, are you, and when my wife, she reads and she's in this area of health, nutrition, physiology, she's heard it all. And so I'm hoping to have her on, and I'm going to promote the book as I have anybody who's been on with books. But it's really she'd be an excellent one to bring into the loop with the degree of expertise she has. And I'm not sure if everybody here knows her at all, but she's had stage 4 cancer and overcome it. And I'm not sure where she's at, but she seems to be going at 100 miles an hour with everything in her life. And the books were delivered to my door. I ordered 5 copies. Tim, I'm going to drop one off at your place.
Great, thanks.
And I forgot to get them autographed because she does the dropping off, or her sister does the dropping off. So
what's her background, Wally? Like, what's her?
I think athletically, I don't know whether she was a marathoner or a cyclist or a triathlete, but she was a high-level competitor in her day. And she has a number of degrees. The latest one, the doctorate, was completed at the University of Calgary. The other ones were completed at different universities, one of them in the States, but all related to neuroscience. And I actually had her and Haley meet with Ron Jarrett, who's it's called neurokinetic therapy that I've had done with me. And there's a sort of a private company that you can get certified to do this kind of therapy. So I had both of them come up to Ron's office and meet, and we tested Haley out, and they both gave us a lot of good advice on it. And then when I was laid up, Tim, with my crutches and my knee swollen, she and Haley came over to the house, and she did a massage and worked on some pressure points and left me with a cream, not a cream, but an ointment that I rub on that she's produced in marketing called Rock On. And so I've been promoting that because I'm using it again with my knee. I've had some trouble the past month here. I was on crutches and now I'm off them and getting back to normal. So at my age, the call I got was about my pacemaker. The wire that's in the healthiest part of my heart doesn't seem to be working properly, so I've got to get it attended to. But everything that Sil Corbett is talking about is being able to maintain your focus, your mental health, and your physical health. And it's written in such a wonderful way that my wife's an English expert. If you make a spelling mistake or a grammatical error, she'll point it out. And she asked me who proofread the book, and I said, I think her sister. She said, well, usually after one page, I can find an error in just about any book written, and I haven't had one in the first 3 chapters here. She's very impressed with it. So, listen,
maybe you should get the Flames 20 copies so they can defunk.
Well, it's that kind of a book, you know, and it's really scientific, but it's not confusing scientific, you know. Like I thought, my grade 11 granddaughter, she thought my wife thought the grade 11 granddaughter could certainly interpret and understand it. We all would appreciate it more than the average athlete who might not be educated in the sports science areas. But she writes in such a simplistic way and makes her points in such a positive way. It's just an interesting read and a good book. And I love her. Her chapters are preceded with a cartoon page that describe the chapter, and they make you think, well, oh boy, I better read the chapter to see what this cartoon means. And it's pretty good. It's a work of art and academically quite good. So, you know, I'm curious about Tampa and the creation of a culture. And I think, Dom, in your program, that's the most important thing to stay focused on. You're running into the frustration of recruiting. And one of the things in the research paper that I was given by Dave Barrett on transformational leadership, interviewing all the CIS coaches, one of them, and I believe it's Howie Draper, is quoted in there and done a number of papers on leadership. The importance of recruiting good people. And I mentioned this story because University of Ottawa, the gentleman that had to start the program from scratch, recruited junior A captains, and he now recruits good people versus good players. And I think that's how he's done. He's observing who the captains are, observing who the hard workers are, and that's sort of the way to go and the course to stick to. So that's just a bit of advice. The gentleman I talked to yesterday with his PowerPlay company, he was talking about his daughter playing hockey, being a third, fourth liner in the PWHL. And they weren't even thinking of scholarship or anything. She just was playing. But she got approached by a prep school coach when she was in grade 11 or 10, playing in the PWHL. But she was a third, fourth line player, and she was approached by this prep school coach who said how much he liked the way she played. And she couldn't believe it. That, what are you doing talking to me? I'm a third, fourth liner. And he said, well, you do You work harder than anybody. You play without the puck. You do all the little things right. And the next year, he scouted her, and he said, "You're doing everything better than you did before. We want you to come to our prep school." She did end up going to an NCAA school, but I talked to the fellow about the problem with that is at the PWHL, you're labeled as a third, fourth liner already, and here she got a scholarship. So just giving them a chance to play all situations and develop and believe in them. That's sort of my philosophy. And I think you're coaching your team that way, Dom. When you mentioned you're playing the tournament, I asked you if you had the urge to shorten the bench to compete more, and you literally said no. And I think that's the right philosophy at that level with that age group. So
Yeah, I, yeah, I didn't shorten it. I don't know if I didn't have the urge. I think part of me at times, was holding my breath. But obviously, it's just, I mean, I know, Tim, you had given me that book, The Confidence Code, and it's just, there's so many instances just in every single practice and game that come out like again and again, especially the girls. It's just, especially the ones that, because we have some that have been playing with the boys and then now have switched over, and they weren't great players when they were playing with the boys, but it's just like, it's like, I don't understand why they played, because I can't imagine they had too much fun with it. I'm sure it just was something their parents wanted them to be active, and so that they were checking that box kind of thing. But it really is sad, actually, when I think about it, because they, a lot of these girls, they're just, they're just not allowed to play. They're just, they get it and they just rim it around the wall, and they don't even look to make a play. Like they're not even like, that's the last thing on their mind. And so, yeah, but no, you definitely see the confidence, and even, and then, as I mentioned, like, our girls typically, when they come out east, well, in previous years, they would just be lucky to even just be in the game. And so I found out, because a couple of years ago they went to the Nationals, and I didn't know how they got to the Nationals, and it came out that they basically had a bye to the Nationals because the Ducks were hosting it. Anaheim was hosting it. And so the San Jose Sharks just basically got a bye to the Nationals. And then, hearing more information about it, like, they literally parked the bus in front of the net. They literally had 5 girls in front of the net, and they would get outshot like 60-5, and just try to. And so, I think that was 3 years ago now that happened. And so, now that they're actually making plays and trying to, and be able to have some influence in the game and be able to be in the game, that, and again, it's not anything radical that we're doing. We're just basically saying, just encouraging them to play, and to be able to play with their head up. In a nutshell, I mean, obviously there's certain details that, as they get a little bit older here, you're starting to to hone in on. But like, it's, to me, it's, and the one thing that it actually, just evidence of that. So we have one girl that played with us last year. She's from Minnesota originally. And so she played with us last year. She had been with the boys up until last year, and then she came and played. And then she decided she's going to go to Shattuck. She's originally from Minnesota, and so she's going to go to Shattuck. And so she's been there before she came. She went to the national camp as well, but she went to a couple weeks in a row of a kind of a pre-camp at Shattuck's that they have. And then she went to national camp, and then she came to this one here, and her mom. Or I didn't hear this from her mom. I heard it kind of through the grapevine that they're so structured that she was, like, I could tell she was almost contemplating. Well, she wasn't almost. She's contemplating her decision, because how structured do they want them to be at Shattuck's. Like there's not a lot of you know, room to be able to make plays. They're expected, you know, and you can imagine, you know, how limiting systems could be or can be, but you know, but it's as I say, it's you know, again, you know, just trying to wrap my head around as the kids get older and closer to going away to college here. It just seems that there's less and less ability to, or not ability, but less and less freedom that the girls are given. And again, like it's shocking. It was shocking when I went to Detroit, and it's even more so here now because it's limiting for the girls. You're muted, Wally.
Those girls have to be prepared for that kind of an environment when they leave your program.
Yeah.
And that's, if you coach in a way that transmits beliefs and develops and everybody plays all situations. And we've talked about this before. There is a point where you have to earn your ice time. And that research paper done on transformational leadership, interviewing I think 8 coaches, one had won 8 national championships, another 2, and the others had won 1. And the research questions were based on their leadership styles related to communication and all the 4 categories. And one of the key things that came across on the gentleman that won that came across through the whole thing was the acceptance of roles. Because if players are brought up with, because they're recruiting the best players that got double shifted, and you didn't do that, and they get there and don't get ice time, it's not a fun experience. So you have to prepare them for a different, they got to be prepared to play for different coaches with different philosophies and different styles. And I think that's part of it. And more importantly, at your level, develop them, let them play, but in the process, be prepared for wherever you go and are recruited to go. Because there aren't many people that transmit belief, maximize performance in everyone by having everyone play a role. Like one shift a game isn't a role. You're just giving somebody a little bit of a rest interval. That's all.
Yeah.
So any thoughts on Tampa Bay, Tim? And I know you and I were the only ones, and I took notes, Tim, from your original email with your thoughts, and then I took notes throughout the series using your thoughts as my reaction from game to game to game to game on the X's and O's of the series. But I'll throw something out to all of you, and I've talked about this with a number of people. It was brought to my attention during a podcast that I did. The lady doing the podcast said the most impressive thing, and I discussed it in the podcast, and the reason Tampa Bay won was because of their culture. And a demonstration of that occurred when they took a team picture. And the players waited until the entire staff of about 100 people got on the ice. And that's, and they were also, during their walk around, they had Barb Hunterhill, who was a, skating specialist working with the different players, but like 100 people on the ice, literally office people, anybody who had any part to do with the organization. So I think that culture piece was really huge, and something that organizations would benefit from, whether they're sporting or anything else. Did anybody else take note of that?
I didn't see the last game because I was traveling, so I did not notice it. I mean, obviously, it seems from the outside looking in, they do have a tremendous culture there, and Cooper's done a great job of, cultivating that. And he seems like, just sort of the quintessential modern coach who is a good people person as well as a pretty astute sort of tactical guy as well. I mean, they have one of the best teams. There's no question about that. I mean, they're really deep at forward. They're really deep on the blue line. They're great in goal, but that doesn't guarantee you a win. But yeah, the culture piece seems to be an important part of it.
Yeah, I mean, just in hearing him, and again, I've heard this before. I mean, he just, I think, to me, and again, like, who knows what goes on behind closed doors in regards to the systems and what they play or whatever. Again, but just his overall approach to, and again, hey, he could be, and he could be the greatest actor, and full of it, but I get the sense that he's genuine and he's authentic. And when he speaks that, whether it's the handshake line, like he's speaking, like he's not full of it and he's not full of himself. Hey, you have to have a certain amount of swagger to be a head coach in the NHL. Like, let's just be clear. But I think, like, the thing that I take away for every time I hear him speak is that he's a genuine, authentic guy, right? And he speaks from the heart, and he's obviously, he's pretty smart, and he knows that the group, how they are and how he is going to affect the way they are with each other. And I mean, I don't think it's something to be underlooked. I think it's not coincidence that, the way he is and the way he kind of portrays himself, tends to, leads to the culture that they have. I just get a general sense that he's just not checking boxes. Like, a lot of times you talk to guys and they check boxes, right? Like, they ask you how you are. They're not really asking you how you are. They're just kind of, yeah, saying that they're checking in with you. But I generally think that he generally, is present with the individual conversations that he has and with the message that he's trying to get across. And to me, that resonates. Like, players pick up on that. Like, you can't fake that.
Yeah, it's arguable that the main reason they won this year, and you could even say the main reason they won last year, was they didn't fire Cooper when they probably had two opportunities to do it. They, whether it's Yzerman first recognized, hey, this guy is a good person, a good coach, and teams win and lose for a lot of different reasons, but he wasn't the reason. And they stuck with him when probably a lot of other organizations might have caved. Maybe not the first year, but certainly the second year they fell short. They might have said, hey, you know what? We got to go in a different direction. So it's arguable that, getting a good person who has a good plan, a good strategy, obviously emotionally intelligent, and just believing in him and what he's doing was the biggest reason they won this year and last.
Yeah, agreed. They easily could have fired him after Columbus.
Yeah.
But they made some changes. They got, they got rid of some, like, TJ Miller's a good player, right? Like, they ended up moving him. They ended up getting Maroon in, right? Like, they ended up getting a little bit more physical, and they brought in, like, even like Luke Shen, like, doesn't play a lot, but he's a monster, right? Like, he played in, like, it was like a cartoon character. He played in San Diego against us, but they knew they had to fill a void in maybe physicality or whatever it was. But you're right, Tim. I think a lot of especially with the salary and expectations and everything else, you start throwing around, well, we have our window and we've got to win within it. It would have been very, very easy to be able to change one guy, and then now you're kind of starting from scratch, right, with who you bring in. So look at, I was amazed. I looked at, because I played in Syracuse, and so I follow, they were Pittsburgh and they were Vancouver's farm team at the time. So I still follow one of the guys that I don't know what he did. He may be the president now there or whatever. So on his LinkedIn feed or Facebook or whatever it was, it had listed all the players that had played in Syracuse. Like, it's their whole roster. Like, there's outside of like a Kucherov, I think even Kucherov had, but there's a couple that maybe were, like Hedman, I think, was one of the guys that were not on there. Like, okay, he's a first, whatever he was for a pick. But the fact that, it wasn't in Syracuse when he was there, I think their farm team was in Norfolk, but the fact that he had come up with those guys and to be able to have all those guys a part of their farm team, and then now all those guys were, like, to me, that's not a coincidence. You know what I mean? Like, that's and that's something, I like my days in Rochester. We went to the final 2 years in a row. 2 years later, those guys went on and they were in the semifinals in Buffalo, right? Like, I think there's something to be said about those guys growing up together and the coach growing along with them. And that's the one thing in Calgary I think that they're doing right, is they've got, they had Huska down and they brought him up, and now they have Cale McLean. He's now going up as well. Like, I don't know how many of the guys are going to be coming up from when Cale was there, but he was a defensive coach when Rasmus Anderson was back there, right? Like Huska was there when Mangiapane and was there. So I think that there's, I don't think it's rocket science per se, but I think it's important because it's not just 1 year that you come in and you're going to change a bunch of things and then everything is just going to click. Like, it takes some time, and I think that's they've proven that in Tampa. It's not, they've won back to back, but like Cooper, I don't know what year he won with the Calder Cup, but that's a while ago now, right? Like, that's so.
I everything you're saying makes sense, and the culture that you have and you create it. There's so many people involved in terms of who makes the decision to get rid of the coach, who makes the decision to make player changes, be it Giordano not being protected. I like that. I'm glad you made the point about the Flames. I really watched the World Championships closely, Dom, and Mangiapane was the MVP of the World Championships. And for him to go and play at that level, and it was brilliant coaching, I believe, by everybody playing a role and some people exceeding expectations in the roles they played. And I don't think anybody expected that outcome at the World Championships. But it's good coaching, good communication in short-term competition. But boy, in the long term, maintaining your head above water and avoiding getting fired, there's a lot of things in the process. And I think the biggest thing is find your culture, make sure your culture is, I think, value-driven, and develop the character, work on character, pick good people that will play the right way. And I go back to that PowerPlay at the beginning, company that's created this app and minor hockey, and looking at all the intangible qualities and the communication with coaches. The parents are privy to it. It's all about doing the right things the right way all the time, all your life. And I think it's those behaviors that add up to championship performance, whether it's on the ice or off the ice. So, no, really, really good discussion on that topic. And Tim, what's happening with your girls and the Worlds? Are they coming to Calgary, or is the competition on and scheduled? Or
It, it's really, to me, it's really amazing that, and this is not an attack on you, Wally, because I believe there's been a tremendous void, I think, on the IHF, from the IHF standpoint. We didn't have a game schedule for the event until a week ago. We still don't have a practice schedule. People are unaware really that it's going on. I find it hard to believe they're not going to allow some fans in the building, but there's been no talk about that, no mention of that. It's almost like it's a ghost event. Very strange. I mean, they're all coming in on the 10th. All the teams come in on the 10th, and it starts on the 20th and runs through to August 31st. But it's been very shoddily handled, I think, by the IHF. You know, they get bogged down, they get focused on the men's championship, and this one has fallen by the wayside. It's really been disappointing. And I don't know how much of it is, is Hockey Canada's responsibility, but there's been, the communication has been really disappointing. So it's still fun, but.
In relation to that, before we get to Tom, I've been paying close attention to female hockey at the national level. And for all of you, Dom and Tim and Tom, if you, the National Women's Program has created a pawn to podium sequence. And if you go into the site in the left-hand column and clicked on coaching things, at the very bottom is pawn to podium. Click on that, and you can register and listen to all of the speakers that they've had come in. And it's exceptional. Like I've got renewed faith in the ability of that group and how they're operating. They had Tara Watchorn speaking about coaching defense, and I was very impressed with everything she said. Jessica Campbell talking on offensive skills, and in the light of all the people we've talked to, they're up to speed on just about everything. So I'm impressed with the pawn to podium and the direction that they're going. And I think it's worth listening in and picking. You can click on each presentation is 40 to 60 minutes. And there's something to be learned from every one of them by all of us. So, Tom?
Yeah, just as far as the World Championships, I got a email the other day, well, not the other day, a couple of weeks ago, asking if any of my players wanted to volunteer to live in the bubble starting the 10th or 11th or something, right to the end of the month, and be available. I think with my players, it would be to scrape the ice during the timeouts. And what they would do is they'd stay in a hotel and get the food and all this sort of thing. And so then, anyways, that was Hockey Canada or the IHF, I guess, asking for volunteers. So that's, I don't know if any of my players volunteered or not, because I've only had about 4 or 5 that live in Calgary. But that was one thing that happened.
Jordan mentioned Fenton applied to volunteer, but he can't live in a bubble. And so he pulled himself out of that. So I'm not sure where they're at and where they're going. And of course, the travel issues and the COVID issues, I don't know that they're all settled yet, but it is what it is. So,
yeah, it seems at this point in time, it seems a little excessive to say people need to be living in a bubble, but that's what's happening. So It's been a little bit disappointing, just the whole process. We're still looking forward to it, obviously, but it's a little disappointing in a lot of fronts.
Dom, when you were in the tournament in Boston, are people wearing masks at all?
No,
Are they separating and distancing?
no, nobody's got a mask on.
Okay.
The only place I have to have a mask on is in the airport. I almost got kicked out of the airport because I had to drop my daughter off. After the first weekend, I dropped her off, and then I've been here by myself. But yeah, that was the only time I walked into the airport, and you have to have a mask in the airport. But outside of the airport, like, there's nobody that has a mask on.
Okay. Because on the weekend, I went to a Ryan Hilderman. There was a selects tournament for Pee Wee players, Western Canadians, really good players. And Ryan had 4 kids that were on. There was 6 different teams, and they were each on different teams. And I went to basically sit with Ryan and watch. And it's the first time, really, it was quite packed. I didn't see one mask. I never wore a mask. It's the first time. And the whole weekend, it was just an exceptional event. The quality of hockey. There are all those rogue teams, the best of the best rogue teams getting together. And when I watched them play, Tim, anything the pros can do, those kids can do. The skill level was incredible. And they're ready for the things that are being cutting edge at the pro level. When you talk about systems and tactics and capability and potential, their skill levels are very high, and taking it to a higher level yet, they're capable of it. So I was pretty impressed, but I went through the first time opening myself out to going out and mingling and being with people. I never wore a mask, and when I go to visit Daryl today, I think I'll probably wear my mask, but small group. But it's that consciousness, or that worry still hangs over you. That's all. It sounds like there hasn't been much of that in the States, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think in around San Jose, in the rink in San Jose, it's because the county's different. It's Santa Clara County. Like, California's a little bit different. Like, so you're kind of not sure. Some restaurants or stores that require masks, some don't. The kids in school, I think they're saying now the kids are still going to have to wear a mask in school, which is going to be interesting to see how they enforce that. But as I say, in regards to Boston here in Massachusetts, I can't recall. I mean, and you can see, like, so we're in the hotel. I was in the hotel lobby today. There's some people coming from out of state, and I'm not sure exactly from where. And they're wearing masks. So, but in Boston here, there's like restaurants and that. Like, I've gone, like Starbucks, Chipotle, name it, and there hasn't been any masks. So
Tim, do you think it's excessive?
Excessive? Sorry.
Well, like you use the word
we're living under.
Yeah.
Well, I'm of two minds. I mean, you can look at it. We're not quite out of the woods yet with all the variants around. I mean, starting to flare up all over the U.S. again. But we are getting to a point where, hey, if people want to be vaccinated, they can be vaccinated. And if you're vaccinated, there's very little chance that you're going to be seriously ill or hospitalized. So we're getting to the point where it's like, make your choice, and the rest of us got to move on. The only exception to that would be, we're in good shape here in Canada and the U.S. and a lot of the industrialized worlds are getting into good shape vaccination wise, but there's still several billion people in the world that haven't had access to vaccines yet, and until they do, we're all going to help spread the virus. And if we just go about our business willy-nilly, still a tough one. So
Do you think it should be mandated?
Surprised. It's probably locally. I was surprised that, like, the men, when they went to the World Championship, they had to quarantine for 2 days, test on either end, then they were out. And now we're gonna have to quarantine for 5 days. And the Alberta government, we were part of a 3-month study where they did the 2-day quarantine thing with a test on either end. And, it seems like they did that for no reason. If it proved to be successful, why wouldn't they go the extra step? And, when we're in the situation we're in now. But the most surprising thing to me is they haven't announced that, hey, we're selling tickets and we're going to allow 50% capacity or something like that. It seems weird that they're requiring a bubble.
Yeah. Well, I think they had a bubble at the World Championships. There weren't people in the stands, if I recall. Dom,
Yeah.
have you had both your shots?
I have, yeah.
Tim, do you think shots can be mandated, or is that impossible in a democracy?
No, I think it's impossible. I think they're doing they're taking the right approach where they're trying to encourage people and incentivize people. And, in the end, if there's 10 or 15% of the population that doesn't want to get vaccinated, that's their business. In the end, they're the ones that are going to suffer, not the rest of us so much. If the science proves out that if you're double vaccinated at this point, there's an infinitesimally small chance you're going to have any serious consequence. It's going to be like the flu. So, no, I don't think we're at a point where we can demand it of people. If they go the sort of the passport route where it seems like we're headed, that if you want to travel to any great extent, you're going to have to show a vaccine passport. Like, that's a pretty huge incentive for a lot of people. So it's a tough issue.
Yeah.
Sort of getting back where we started, I was thinking, like, with Geo going to Seattle. Well, I'm not sure, Don, you got more info than you, but it was certainly my view this year that the Flames were not deep enough on D, and their young D, like, I think Anderson took a bit of a step back this year. He struggled. He was inconsistent. And my view was that he still needs to be sort of maximum a 4 or 5 guy, not a top 4 guy. And he would have benefited, I think, immensely from sort of being in that role versus now where he's going to be sort of thrust into a top 4 role, it looks like. And he has the potential to grow in that situation. And same with Valimaki. Like, for me, he was inconsistent and I might say, from my standpoint, disappointing this year, given his potential. And again, now maybe he's going to be more comfortable getting more ice time, and maybe he grows from that. But my overall view is they're not going to be in as good a position this year coming as they were last year, because they're going to be even bigger question mark on the blue line for me, losing Geo. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. In some ways, they prove me wrong, but
yeah, no, I agree. I think, I know going into the year, because I sat down with the guy that runs the PowerPlay there and just talking about different options. And I know, so Gio comes off of 1 year removed of winning the Norris and had, I don't know, 75, 80 points, So they thought that, he was disappointed. They were disappointed in their, production and Gio's production on the power play. So they, they had the strong power play with Gustafson at the back. They kind of started to move Gio off, and then they were like, okay, well, Anderson is going to go into that role, and I remember him asking me point blank, can he handle first power play? And full disclosure, in the minors, he wasn't on my first power play in the minors because I didn't think that he was just a little bit too slow making plays. Like he could see it, but it took, like, he wasn't, to me, he's not a top guy on the power play. It was just like, you've got to be elite to be that top guy. Like that Gustafson, he had that. Gio had, he had the good quick shot to get through. So I think initially they had him pegged too high. So when they started the season, and then, then they also thought Valimaki would be someone to be able to come in on the power play, and eventually, like, Gio would probably be off it. But what they didn't take into account is that Valimaki hadn't played for like a year and a half, right? He had knee injury from, he had like ACL, MCL from a basketball injury in the summer or whatever it was. And so, because they really thought that Val was going to be a top 4 guy. And so, they came into the season with, Anderson on the power play. And then what started happening was, and I kind of heard this from guys that I talked to, is that they started to really get on Anderson. Like the players started really to get on him and started to be, like, they're not getting the puck and they think they should get it. Now there's body line. And so that really eroded, I think, on his overall game. And this is just my opinion, just because I was up there and watching, it's because, like, Andy has a swagger, right? But it's a false swagger, right? Like, typically the guys that really exude that over, confident, like, there's a little piece in their mind that doesn't think that they can do it. The guys that are quietly confident, but for him, it was like almost an extreme. So when they started eroding at that confidence on the power play, to me, it translated to the rest of his game, and he started to, now his 5-on-5 game started to go down. Then they took him off the power play, and so now he's not even on it anymore. He was on the second unit, or you know what I mean. So, and then Valimaki, the same thing, hadn't played. Like, he played for us in the minors and was really, really good. Like, he, like, right from the start, like, you could see, like, he's a guy, for me, who's going to be a better power play guy than Andy. But there's steps, like the steps from the American League to the NHL is a massive step. To think that all of a sudden they were just going to roll him in to play in that role. So then, we started to play and he started to press it a little bit much, because I'm sure that they told him, hey, if you do well, we're going to move you onto the power play, second unit, potentially the top unit. Well, you could see it. He started to try too much, and then they had him with Nesterov for a while, and it was like it seemed on a game by game basis, it was like at least 1 or 2 massive mistakes that he would make that would end up in the back of their net. And so then, and then I'd watch him in practice and things that they were doing, like, they thought that his foot speed were too slow. So they just had him constantly doing, quick off the wall, recovering back to the middle. And yeah, sure, like, that's for sure that those details in practice are going to help you. But, like, I think they just needed to bring him along a little bit slower. And I don't know that Nesterov was the best partner, to be perfectly honest with you. I think, maybe in a perfect world, and I don't know if Gio would have been happy with it, maybe you have Gio on the third pair with, and again, he's making 6 or whatever he's making. But, to your point, Tim, they're missing, they're missing, they're going to need to get somebody, for me, because you've got Hannafin. Hannafin's not a power play guy. Like, I know Jeff Ward had the conversation, with him and watching clips with him. To me, again, this is my opinion, he just doesn't see, like, yeah, he's a good second pair shutdown guy, but I don't think he has that high level of offensive ability to be able to make those kind of plays that need to be made on a first power play to be made. Like, I don't see it. I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is on that. So, no, I mean, I think you've got your top, that's a great shutdown pair, Tanev and Hannafin. Now, you've got your bottom, if you got Valimaki and I don't even know who I think they've got Mackey there now. Mackey's a good player, but I think he's a bottom pair. He's for sure even to start. But you're missing now. To me, you're missing 1-2. Like I don't know who goes in there.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, and do they end up? They all. I mean, everything you hear, they're worried about their scoring next year, and lots of ways I see that as less a problem than their blue line. I think they're guys had off years this year, but when I look at them up front, I think they should be okay up front in lots of ways, but for me, not so much on the blue line. But thinking seems to be the other way around. So probably why I'm just sitting watching and not being paid to.
Yeah. There's something to it. I mean, there's something to it. I mean, you need to be able to play all 6 guys in the back end. They more than anything, and I think we talked about it on this call, the small area play and little plays to get out of your end. Like that to me, I think in the middle, even though they don't have a clear-cut number 1 center, I think the 3 or 4 guys that they have there, I think that they can manage that as a committee. But I think if you don't have the 5 guys that can make plays to get out of your own end, I think you're going to be in one. I think and they've got Stone back in the mix. I think he obviously is in favor. He's moved himself ahead of Shillington and ahead of whoever else, just based on his size and his ability to play physical to an extent. So I don't know. I think they're going to have to get somebody, but we'll see. We'll see what that turns in, who that turns into.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to go out and find let alone a top 2, a top 3, or top 4D. It's pretty tough to find one of those guys. I'm not sure who is or isn't available. I really like Martinez in Vegas. I think he's a free agent. He'd be a really capable top 4 guy, but again, maybe a marginal sort of power play type, but but I think a very useful guy. Go ahead, Wally.
I'm curious. Both you guys have played at a higher level, and who are guys that you played with that unmistakably were your first line power play? They could center the first line power play, or they were definitely your first point man on the power play. Who were some of those players who fit that role, stuck in that role? I'm thinking, okay, well, Bobby Orr, he was one, and I'm looking at all the teams in the NHL, and who are people you think of that you played with, that played the power play, that locked it, that they solidified it?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Edmonton there, obviously Doug Waite did a great job as being kind of a half wall guy, and Yanni Niinema was pretty good at it. It's that top spot on the power play. That's tough. I mean, you've got to, I mean, those are the guys that I was there in Buffalo. There they had Shipnick up there at the top, and they had the Dixon Ward. I mean, it was a bit of a collective. Miro Shatan was running it there in Buffalo. I mean, they had some guys that were pretty good. I mean, obviously the Pittsburgh crew. I mean, they're Hall of Famers. I mean, I don't even need to mention their names. But I wasn't really there that long, to be honest with you. But I think in Calgary there, as I say, I think obviously Gio was able to get pucks through, and he had the ability to make little plays. I think he became a little bit predictable. I think as he played, the more and more he played, and we talked about this, the more and more he played, I think he got be a little bit predictable in the breakout and that. But to me, like a Torrey Krug is somebody that is, obviously Hedman is a unicorn of how big he is and how well he moves. But yeah, you've got to be you got to be able to move, and you've got to be able to have that hockey sense. And they're tough. They're tough to come by.
I found, and I'm throwing this out at both of you, and I don't know that either of you watch it as closely as I did in the World Championships. Potential first round pick Colin Power started the tournament as the 7th and 8th defenseman. Somebody went down. He got paired with Stretcher, and the kid was the MVP in the semifinal game against the Russians. And I looked at him and I thought of Valimaki. Every time I've seen Valimaki, I've seen those flashes of brilliance. And you're looking for consistency in them. And so being able to identify those people that will be able to sustain a performance in a consistent fashion at a higher level, that's what really baffles me. So Tim, do you have any thoughts on that? And you're selecting people, you see the gift, and are we screwing with them by mixing them up, changing them too often, not showing faith in them, and they begin to doubt themselves? What's the secret?
Well, if I knew the secret, I might not be sitting here. I might be sitting in an NHL office somewhere. But it's a fine line, as we all know, with coaches showing faith and transmitting belief when and there's that battle all the time between the scouts who see players in junior and have a sense of what they can do and what their capabilities are. Then when they come to an NHL camp or an NHL team, and maybe they struggle a little bit early, and the coaches don't see the same qualities in the player. It's an age-old difficulty, but that's why it's so important, and maybe part of Tampa Bay's secret too, that there's a bit of trust between the coaching staff and the scouting staff. Like, who knows? It's a delicate dance and a delicate balancing act, trying to nurture some players. When I think fair to say most players probably lack the really solid 100% belief in themselves that is surely a quality of the star players, like their rock solid belief that they are capable of delivering and that they will deliver in most circumstances, even in the face of their own personal failures in a given moment. They have that rock solid belief in themselves. So it's a delicate balance.
That's a good point. It reminded me of Daryl talking about his approach with the elite players he works with and taking them out of their comfort zone. And it gets to a point where they're frustrated, but they say to him, "Screw you, I can do it." And they are, as a result, the kind of players who are locks consistently in those situations. And how do you identify that confidence? I go back to that very beginning of our session where this app on the PowerPlay, on PowerPlay, the program they have with kids wanting to track the intangibles. So there's the subjective side, and making coaches be more positive, more encouraging, giving more specific direction. That is recorded, monitored, shared with parents and players. And out of it comes the statistic of finding out about the kind of character they have that you breed and how you transmit belief as a coach. But that statistic, which is subjective, they tend to provide. And that's why the baseball scouts said, you could put us out of business. So I'm curious about that tool and where it might go in terms of not only, developing more consistent athletes that believe in themselves to play to that degree. But did you watch Colin Power play at all, Tim?
No, I didn't see really any of the World Championship.
Well,
so I've only heard about him.
An 18-year-old not drafted and playing with Stetcher, who I never really heard of, is an exceptional defenseman. He had the liberty to go, and he had the confidence to go, and he took high risks, and he came back and recovered. But the game against the Russians, his ability to manage the puck under pressure, which the Russians provided, was the difference maker in that game, and it stuck out. So, I'm thinking he'll be a first round pick, but
well, they're all saying he's going to be the number 1 pick.
Yeah. I'm sorry. He should be the first pick just from that performance. Would I have said that before that tournament? I wouldn't have even known who he was. So I'm just trying to extrapolate everything we've talked about today into here's a kid coming in. What's he going to become? And how can you breed and nurture that kind of quality in elite athletes to believe in themselves and build the trust in, as a coach or an organization, to let them play the roles they're capable of playing and let them believe they can and demonstrate that. So I think it's good. It's coming together, and the wheel's going to keep turning in the hockey world, that's for sure.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And talking about Seattle and all their choices too, it's very, very interesting to read some of the analysis, because obviously a lot of the players that I know nothing about or very little about, it was a bit surprising to me that there weren't a few more quote unquote name players selected, especially on the offensive side. Like, it seems like they're going to have a really good, solid top 4, and they're going to probably have a good, solid blue line, which is always a good thing to have. And their goaltending looks like it's going to be, on paper, looks like it's going to be very good, solid. They're missing a little bit on the scoring front, but they may have a sense, after talking to a bunch of free agents, that they're going to be able to sign, a couple of good, solid offensive guys. So it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Well, I was like you when I looked at the list, who they didn't sign and who I thought that they might. And I began to think of, well, they know more about the guys they signed than we do.
Oh yeah, a lot.
I'm thinking they drafted good, solid character, quality players, and they started with that rather than top down. If they can still add some, extreme scoring or whatever it is, I think it's really interesting, just the way they went, because I think it surprised a lot of people. I thought they would sign Price myself. He basically opened himself up, but I don't know. One question I have, Tim, your thoughts on Braden Point and where he was drafted and what he's become in terms of what we're talking about. Was he a 4th round pick? Was he a 1st round pick? Do you remember?
I think he was. I'll just look here. I'm pretty sure he was higher than 4. I think he might have been a late 1st rounder or a second. I'm not sure. I'm just going to check your. I think if I recall, he may have been injured his last year junior. Like, he sort of went from he played basically 5 years in Moose Jaw, and he went from sort of a little better than a point a game guy his third and fourth years to, he had almost 2 points a game in his last year, but he only played 48 games. So I don't know whether he got hurt that year, but he was third round, so 80th overall, and that was 2014. So his draft year, he was kind of a little better than a point a game guy in Moose Jaw. He was like 90 points in 72 games. So a good solid offensive player, but I know Al Murray real well, the head scout for Tampa Bay. He's a pretty sharp guy and a Western Regina guy or Saskatchewan guy. So he may have had a little more intel on him, but obviously they took him in the third round. So maybe they didn't think he was a first or second rounder at that point either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
players develop that way. Some are a little bit late bloomers, and there's no accounting for a lot of that stuff.
Well, of all the teams that have created power play specialists and yet been able to balance minutes and get the most out of everybody, they're the best example. So you sort of look at templates and models and to follow, and I think Tampa is an organization and a coaching template to emulate to a degree. But it's a great era to be in. Do you think they're going to win another championship? Are they capable of it?
Well, I think they're certainly capable, especially depending on how they fill in their back end. They still got all the pieces. Right now, they still have all the offensive pieces, and they have Vasilevsky, and they're still looking pretty solid on the blue line. We don't really know what their team's going to look like at this point because of their cap issues, but they're certainly still capable, and I would say they'll be in the mix in terms of the favorites for next year, depending on how it all pans out. So I'm just looking at the draft list for Braden Point's draft year, and looking at the first round. I mean, Monahan went 6th in the first round that year. Looking at guys that maybe haven't panned out to this point. Number 14, Alexander Wenberg to Columbus. I'm really not familiar with his career at this point. Curtis Lazar, 17th overall that year, who has struggled at the NHL level. I'm looking at forwards now. Kirby Reichel, 19th overall. The Flames pick Poirier, really way off the chart at this point, number 22 overall. And there's a bunch of guys in the first round that are nowhere near the players that that Point is at this point, including the Flames' other pick, Klimchuk. Maybe they still develop into good players, but there's 4 or 5 guys in the first round who are nowhere near the player Braden Point is right now.
Yeah.
So Al is. I mean, I meant to look to see who Tampa took in the first round that year. Let's take a look. Selections by round. Whoops. Did Tampa even have a first rounder that year? That's another good question. It doesn't look like they did. So, yeah, they did. They took Drouin, who is obviously a legit first round guy that year, who's had some issues, but still a pretty good player. And they took left winger Tampa did in the second round that year. I don't know what he's done since they're Adam Ernie. So, could be that Braden's just one of those guys that had the psychological makeup to become a great player, and obviously had the skills to do it as well. The draft is every year has got a couple of guys like that in it. Hindsight is a great thing.
Yeah. I think it makes me wonder the importance of intangibles, because you can see what's obvious. You can measure the skills and the statistics. Those are metrics.
Actually, I'm looking at the wrong year, I think, but sorry.
Go ahead. And
Okay.
nobody, and you can't objectify intangibles, but you can measure them and develop them, and you know what they are. And I'm wondering, to what degree is that determined the success of some of the players to get to where they are, or hindered them from getting to where they are? I don't know.
I think it's a huge piece. The mental side is, it's almost as big as the physical side. Like, the guys with the physical skills are reasonably easy to identify. So I think it's huge. I mean, the drive to improve, the drive to get better, the drive to improve yourself as a player is a huge piece of it. And then just the confidence in your ability is a monumental piece of it, really.
Tim, I'm going to send you the link on this PowerPlay company and what they're doing. It's pretty impressive looking, but their focus is minor hockey. And they've got a number of associations that are using the app. And the beauty of the app is it causes coaches, parents, and players to communicate and on intangibles by the way they coach, how positive they are, how many times they interact, in terms of the sense of development and belief. And then it measures the metrics of individual skill, performance, speed, number of shots, whatever. It's an interesting balance, but the effect is the positive coaching that comes out of it at the young levels, and the improvement of the player's confidence and the parents' support in that confidence. So I'll send you that link. I'd really like you to read it. And the other thing, Tim, is that thesis by the girl on CIS coaches, 8 of them or 7.
Yeah, that would be interesting to read.
Transformational leadership. I'm going to read it today, and I'm going to drop off that book. I'll just drop it in your mailbox, or just see if you're home. And
I might see you at if you're going to go to Daryl's Ice Times. I probably won't get there today, but I might go
tomorrow or
tomorrow
Saturday
afternoon, maybe.
Yeah, they're both at Father Bauer.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see what he does, and he did email me letting me know about it. So I just want to follow up and stay in contact with him. And it's really interesting that Sil happened to be in Florida when I was aware of her book. When my knee was bothering me, Tim, I don't know if you knew, 3 years ago, but Haley brought Sil over to look at my knee, and she did massage on it and pressure points, and she used this ointment called Rock On. And I haven't really heard from her, but when my knee flared up again last month, I decided to order more Rock On and play with it. So I got in contact with her, and she mentioned she drops it off at your house. They deliver it right from home here. You can buy it on Amazon. But she was in Florida with Daryl at the time, and so here I'm talking to her and talking to Daryl. She picked him up at the airport yesterday. So what a small world. So I'm hoping to have her come on and share a bit of her stuff with us. So
Yeah, I've got I've got the correct draft list here now for points draft year. There were 26 forwards drafted in the first round. I think Tampa took 2 defensemen before in the first round and the second round that year, so they obviously felt, or maybe they felt like they needed to focus at that end of things. But there were 26 forwards taken in the first round, and like Reinhart, Draisaitl, Sam Bennett was one, but William Nylander, Ehlers from Winnipeg would be the notable ones that are obviously pretty damn good NHL players. Alex Tuck, but there are probably 8 or 10 of them in the first round who are not anywhere near the player that Braden Point is. And you get to the second round. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's 38 players selected, forward selected ahead of Point in the first 2 rounds, and there's probably a handful in the third round as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are basically about 45 forwards selected before Point in that draft, and only maybe 8 or 10 of them even approach his level of success in the NHL.
Yeah.
And probably really only 2 or 3 of them really, or none of them have become the player that he's become. So it's an interesting thing, as we all know. And the psychology is a huge piece of that, I would say, for sure.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Anyway, I got to jump off here too. So
yeah, myself, and I got to go too and ice my knee and let my wife know about my pacemaker and stay in touch here. So, how is Peter Elander doing with his health?
Good. He's walking pretty well. Like his with his replacement, he's getting along. So I was kind of surprised how well he was motoring around. So that's a good thing. So he's been dealing with it pretty well.
I like the video at the beach. I love the video. Thanks for sending that.
Yeah, they had a great time at the beach. That was the best. I sort of said at the beginning, that was the best day for me. That was day 3 when, they all got up that morning, and right away we thought, they're all pretty tired. They hadn't skated much in the last couple of weeks, and they had a practice on the Saturday night and 2 practices on Sunday, and the Monday, I guess it was the Monday morning. They were pretty tired, but we talked them through an hour-long skate in the morning. They gave us a good skate, and then we went to the beach for an hour and a half, and it was friggin' hot. Like, it was hot. It was probably 33 or something that day. But they had a great time at the beach. But then we went back to the rink, and we had like a big scrimmage practice planned, and there was it was a bit of a snafu. There was no snack food for them at the rink, so they were a bit cranky about that. But we had a good chat with them at the start of the practice in the afternoon, and they gave us a really, really good hour and 45 minute sort of scrimmage practice, like 5-on-5 situations for 45, 50 minutes, and then sort of 40 minutes of scrimmaging, including some 3-on-3. And it was really, really good. So that was the best day for me, was that they mentally toughed it through that whole day, where it was a long, sort of hot, tiresome day, but they gave us a really, really good effort. So that was the highlight of the week for me.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was good. Yeah, as I've said before, a really, really good group to work with. I hope we just play like ourselves at Worlds, and we manage to win a couple of games. It would be great. Get into a quarterfinal. It would be terrific.
Well, we're looking forward to it, and I'd go to the games, of course, if you could, but who knows what's going to happen. And
yeah, and I haven't seen the televised schedule yet. I can't imagine too many of our B pool games will be on. I imagine the likely will be streamed on Hockey Canada and or the IHF site, but I haven't seen. I'll have to try to get some info on that, see what the deal is.
Well, Tim, because you and I have been in the national program for years, I think it really is incumbent on us to keep up with what they're doing, and that the pond to podium is the best way to do that. I've been pretty critical on the outside about this and about that, and we're wondering about this and about that, but the pond to podium, just the whole purpose of it and the way it was set up and the level of expertise. If you look at Laura Fortino, does a dryland training session in her living room with over 800 or 1,000 young girls across Canada. And it blew me away. And the whole session, all the little, and I think just you looking at it now, you have an exercise physiology. Like we had Peter Norris, and we grew up with that kind of expertise. To see a former player, just her exuberance and energy, doing it in such a way, dealing with, the levels that they might be at, the lowest and the middle and the highest, she was able to demonstrate, maintain your attention. I watched the whole session, and I really appreciated it. So it was good for me to, I'm more optimistic and supportive of what they're doing just from having looked at that. You feel a little bit left out, but that happens, the natural evolution of age, a new generation coming in, and I'm glad they're going in that direction. I'm more optimistic about them moving forward. So listen, I'm going to head out too. Tom, anything you want to throw in?
Well, just trying to solidify this team and make sure that different players are coming. It's SAIT is still all shut down, and they're going to outsource the arena. They're not going to run the arena themselves.
Oh,
So it's going to be quite different. Like we just can't say I want this ice time, as far as I can see. And they have these funny rules right now. Like I can't have exhibition games outside of Calgary. And there's not a whole lot of teams in Calgary until I think in October or something, or maybe end of October. So they still have these strict COVID rules, even though the province isn't, just like in the women's worlds, even though the province isn't under lockdown like that. And so we're transitioning from, those strict rules to what it is now. And even one thing I got was, if your player isn't vaccinated, some of the teams will refuse to play your team if all your players aren't vaccinated. Then I'm getting emails from girls, because there's a lot of anti-vaxxers, saying, do I really need to get vaccinated? And I'm saying I'm sure would encourage you to do it. So those are the kinds of things I'm dealing with. And then to set Hu Dunstan, who, Tim, you know who she is. the defenseman from Kamloops there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was coming, and then there's some little difficulty, and then I think she might live in Lytton that just burnt down. At least
Yeah.
that's where her parents are from. So trying to deal with that, and I kind of don't think she's going to end up at SAIT this year now because of all this stuff going on between the grave sites and the town burning down and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was quite the tragedy, that's for sure. It sounds like the arena thing in the long haul could be the biggest thorn in your side, that you don't have somebody running the rink that basically has you at the top of the pecking order. Like that's that would be a bit of a concern.
Oh, well, he gave us like 4 times we can organize exhibition games. Like our season is going to be, we'll play 3 weekends before Christmas, and then winter semester, kind of a regular schedule. And the presidents decided this when COVID was still, before people were getting vaccinated. So they decided that like 4 months ago or something, and they haven't loosen it up at all. So it kind of looks like that's what we'll be doing. So it's like we're going to start a month later than the U Sport as far as our games go.
Wow.
So they're just calling it a transition year.
I find it, not to get off on the COVID tangent again, but I do find it kind of interesting that there's the approach that, if somebody on one of the teams is not vaccinated, that like that potentially is a big risk for anybody else. Like if you're vaccinated, if the science is correct, you're not really at risk. Even if we get in a room full of people that are unvaccinated, the risk is more on their end than on your end. If you're vaccinated, and especially when you get to be double vaccinated, basically COVID becomes more like a regular flu or less, except in extremely rare situations. So I find it very odd that we all seem to be taking this approach that obviously we want to get as many people vaccinated as we can for the greater good generally, but for, I just don't quite understand how 1 or 2 players on a team that are unvaccinated is going to present much of a risk or any of a risk for everybody that's vaccinated. It just seems ass backwards to me.
Well, I agree with you. And then you look at COVID is opposite. Like when I was a little kid, polio was a thing.
Yeah.
Three kids died within a block circle of me. And it was infantile paralysis. And it was that age group that it was going after. But like 64% of the people dying are 80 plus, and about 20% are between 70 and 80, and 10% between 60 and 70. And that, as far as the college players go, that age group is like less than 1%.
Yeah.
Like they get sick, and I was talking to Calvin Flint up in Grand Prairie there, and he said 2 years ago, before COVID was known, he said this thing was going through their school and the teams and everything, that the same kind of symptoms, like kind of pneumonia-like symptoms and all this kind of stuff. There was kids missing all the time, and they'd be sick for a few weeks. And he has kind of the feeling that COVID was there, going through the high school, a few years ago. And I think that's quite possible.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, we're not scientists. I'm not sure how likely that is, but I mean, it's certainly true that, the regular types of flu have run rampant at different times, and, people die every year from the regular flu, but, and I do understand the science of wanting to get as many people as humanly possible to get vaccinated, get double vaccinated. But once we're getting to the point where, you know, if you don't want to get vaccinated, well, it's your problem, not so much our problem if we're double vaccinated.
Well, I think one thing we've learned that if we wash our hands and all this kind of stuff, because there was hardly any flu this year, and you know, if that was kind of implemented on the way into the dressing rooms and that sort of thing, because I know one player came with the flu my last season I coached there, and it went through the whole team within the month. So, you know, if stay home when you're sick and you know, wash your hands and this sort of thing, we could keep a lot of things under control. I think that was learned from this.
Yeah, for sure. It's,
Well, listen, you guys, I wanted to thank you for coming on. Tim, I was going to talk to you about, you know, possibly canceling the Skype sessions, but I think enough people will come on where if you know, if you, Tim, or I, we just sent out a number of topics. Like I wrote down the ones that before I got on that we did talk about that I got a lot out of. I think the sessions are still worthwhile, so I'll just keep them going. I thought maybe we could start to meet at Cadence again. I don't know if you're up to that.
yeah, well, we're certainly getting to that point where we can meet in person and then maybe do like a internet session once a month or once every 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
If we have sort of a legitimate topic or two that people might have some interest in,
Yeah.
you know, we could start going that way too. Yeah.
Like I don't mind meeting for coffee just to meet you guys face to face and shoot the breeze, and it'll lead to hockey, no doubt. But like it's just that when people are getting back to the routine, I'm really glad Dom got on, but I didn't think anybody would get on because they're in the routines, and our routines, the three of us, are pretty wide open. So I'm gonna, you know, we'll keep the sessions going, and we'll look forward to talking next week. And if you got anything on your mind that you want to share, I know I'm playing with this
Well, why don't we
PowerPlay.
try Cadence next week?
Sorry, Tom.
Why don't we try Cadence next week?
I'm trying to think.
Or you started that?
I'm trying to think. Like Barb and I are going down south to Chain Lakes and Waterton, but I think that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we could put a note out to like Morris, Derek, the usual suspects, as it were, that we might meet at Cadence next week and see how it goes, and send a message out to all the other Skype people and say, you know, we're maybe going to do it once a month or twice a month from now on. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Would you Skype from Cadence?
Well, if
Well,
they've got Wi-Fi that they let us use.
yeah, I mean, we did that once there real early on with Carla, if you remember.
Yeah.
So we could, you know, if Dom wanted to get on, or
Yeah.
or Jim or anybody that's, you know, so yeah, we can consider that. We maybe make the call next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, let's do that. I've got to go through the misses, of course, on that one, but if we got a number of people to meet there, it would be great. And I'm just dipping my foot in the water now by going out and around and socializing again. So, well, take care, both of you, and thanks very much for everything. Tim, the picture behind you on the wall, what is that?
Oh, it's a paper cast thing. It's like an eagle's head.
Okay.
I think we got it when we were down in Phoenix. One of the years we were down in Phoenix, but.
And where are you in your house?
I'm in our bedroom actually. It's there's a little chair in the corner here, so upstairs.
Okay, I was just curious. So
yeah. Okay. Well,
take care, everybody. Tom, thanks
we'll
very much.
Yeah, we'll email next week and make a plan, maybe on Tuesday.
Okay, we're at 2 hours, and that's pretty good. So Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay, take
Bye.
care. Bye.